Hi, and welcome back to Black Girl Magic Book Chat. It is the last day of March and the last day of Women's History Month. So this is my final book chat. I've had like such a great time doing this, and I know that I will find any other reason to record videos and talk about books. So be on the lookout for that in the next year or so. So let's jump right in. This week I read, or I'm actually still reading, but How to Love a Jamaican by Alexia Authors. So for the most part, I was really just looking through books that we have here at Rudisill, like currently to choose from. But last week I kind of realized that I wanted to share stories of women from another part of the diaspora. So for the most part, I've been looking at books about folks in America, and then we did the one Nigerian tale. So I figure, why not venture down into the Caribbean for this one? So this book was also a book of short stories. And I liked that because it really did give me different viewpoints into Jamaicans and their different experiences with immigrating to America or being back in Jamaica after they had immigrated to America, after they had been in America for a little while. So I'll tell you about three different stories that I liked. I liked a lot of, anyway, I'll tell you about three different stories. So there is the first one, which is Light Skin Girls and Kelly Rowlands, which tells of the beginning and the end of a friendship between two college students in New York. They're both Jamaican, but Cecilia is from California, and she's a middle-class Black girl who Kimberly, our narrator, sees as an Oreo. You know, the whole Black girl on the outside or Black person on the outside, white on the inside sort of situation. Because on the other hand, Kimberly grew up in New York, but she is still pretty close to her Jamaican roots. She lives in a neighborhood full of Jamaicans and other people from the Caribbean. She lives with her mom, who still cooks the food and all of that, and talks the talk, walks the walk. Still very much immersed in her culture. And she is also kind of lower class, and Cecilia is a middle class Black girl. And so this is kind of where the conflict comes from. They don't see the world the same way. Kimberly, her background means that she kind of sees quite often the injustices that Black people experience, the way that Black people are treated, especially the way that gentrification has come in and, influenced the culture of the places and pushed Black folks out. And then on the other hand, you got Cecilia, who comes from money and hangs out with people who come from money. And so that tends to be a lot more white people. And so they get into a lot of arguments, and one that kind of ends their relationship because of this idea that Kimberly's, feels that Kimberly sees the world as broken and Cecilia doesn't necessarily. She even said that Kimberly, she never calls herself Kim, that Kimberly always wanted to play the victim, I guess. And so obviously there's nuances to this, and our experiences do influence the way we feel about things like race. But so that's one of the stories. There's another story called Bad Behavior. So in Bad Behavior, there is Stacy, who is 14 or 15 years old, a teenager living in America with her family, who gets caught with a boy at school. And so that's kind of like the straw that breaks the camel's back. She has been getting in trouble for a lot of other things, and her parents, they don't know what to do. And so they decide to take her down to Jamaica, where the mom's mom is still living, and they leave her there. And the idea is that we're going to take her here because we don't know what to do, and we think that grandma knows what to do. And it's this idea, the idea that the new generation never knows how to raise the respectful kids, and only the harsher older generation knows how to fix it. And so they leave her there, and she gets better. But it's not just because she's with this harsh grandma, because by now grandma's not harsh anymore. You know how it is. People say that, when their kids, mama's harsh and all of this, but by the time they get grandkids, they mellow out. And we kind of see that same thing here. Because underlying is this relationship between mothers and their daughters. And the way that it often appears really combative, that they are fighting for, dominance. And so the grandmother hadn't been great to Stacy's mom, but the mom still sent Stacy down there because she felt like even though grandma wasn't the greatest or the nicest mother, she would straighten her out. But she never realized that the only thing that Stacy wanted was a mom who was going to listen, who was going to, ask, why are you doing this? What is it, what's bothering you? To essentially treat her like a human being. And that's what she actually got out of grandma. So that is why her behavior changed, because here was someone who was treating her in the way that she wanted to be treated. The same way that when Stacy's mom was a kid, that's what she wanted. And I think as a mom dealing with all the things that moms deal with, work and husbands who are, her husband, wasn't reaching his potential is what they said. But like parents who are like dealing with all this, I think in ways they forget, right, what it means to be a kid, because they're inundated with like all of these, their own issues. So there was that one. And then there was another one called Island. And so this one is about a gay woman. She's Jamaican and she has been living in America, and she goes back to Jamaica for a wedding. And so we learn a little bit about her history of like realizing that she likes girls. And she's Jamaican, and that's still something that's very frowned upon as far as I understand it, in Jamaica. And so in this story, it's for her, she's like, I'm going to go to Jamaica and I'm going to be with a woman, because that's something that she didn't think that she could do. But while she's there, and she's there with two of her college friends, and she kind of really, really begins to see the ways in which they treat her differently because of her sexuality. It's subtle for the most part, but it's meaningful. But then there is one moment that's a little bit more than subtle, where she like the two friends that she's with and the bride of the wedding they're there for, they're in the bathroom talking, and they're talking about her, and she happens to hear it. And the bride goes, "Isn't she a lesbian?" And one of the friends answers, "I don't know what she is." And she really recognizes that, and that's the moment, right, where she really sees like, hey, this is supposed to be my friends, but like they have taken my humanity away because of my sexuality. Like, I don't know what she is. And so you kind of really see the ways in which, people who say, oh, I'm okay with it. One, as if it's something for you to be okay with. And two, the way people are still, even people who, are liberal or progressive or whatever the case may be, people are still treating others poorly because of who they love. So you see that there, but there is kind of some hope at the end of it, because you do see how she does find a woman, and kind of like, I guess, sticks it to Jamaica and to her friends. So some of these stories are also from the male perspective. I actually still have a little bit more to go, but because they're short stories, I still was able to talk to you about it, because, each story is different. And there are some stories from the male perspective, which is interesting, but it's Women's History Month, so I didn't want to talk about that. The only thing I'll say that I didn't love is the expectation of, brokenness in relationships. And I don't know if that's the right word, or if that's the word that I mean, but in many of these stories, we see that women are left alone to raise kids because their spouses have gone off with other women, or we see women, remember, being in a car when they're little girls with their dads, and their dad goes into another woman's house and they just sit outside in the car waiting. And I didn't love that. And listen, I know that happens here. It happens everywhere, quite frankly. But after a lot of these stories, I did feel a little bit heartbroken, because it was realistic, and some of these they end with you kind of understanding the feelings and the thoughts of a lot of the characters, but they're not always hopeful, which, you know, is okay. I'm just like I love happy endings. So that's like more of a personal preference than to say anything about the writing, because it is so well done. It's realistic. It's Alexia Arthur is a beautiful author. So you do enjoy these stories because they're tender and they're intimate. And you can't help but see similarities between you or someone you've talked to, because these concepts are universal. So like in these stories, you get not belonging, you know, because you read too much, or resenting a family member or a sibling because even though they do everything wrong, they're still the loved one. And you do all the right things and you're not allowed to mess up. So you see that there. And you see, I don't know what it means to be a dark-skinned woman and not being considered attractive unless you look like Kelly Rowland. So these stories are universal, and you can cling to them. So they're beautiful, and I really enjoyed these stories. Okay, y'all. So next week though, I'm going to be typing up some information about all of the authors that I read this week, this month rather, giving you a little bit more about who they are, where they come from, other books that they read, especially the ones that we've got here in the collection at the Tulsa Library. So be on the lookout for that. I really appreciate you all tuning in every week. I have had, like I said, such a great time talking about books. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I will find a reason to talk about books again. So again, thank you all so much. Bye.